Now, another point in the agenda that I didn't mention in the previous agenda video regarding the train bacteria and the cultures. So was another topic that was kind of like prominent in the last couple of days. Not a new topic, but it's kind of like prominent, and I decided that it's worth. I mentioned it, and I saw about it, and decided it's worth my attention. So it will be like another objective in the growing list of the objectives that we set for this list of experiments. I mean, this series of experiments. Again, not everything should be achieved. Something can be left for the next for the future. I define this set as because as working with the same initial mixture or its derivatives. So the idea is the topic is the topic of salt. Because I work in such limiting conditions, when I use salt, I use just kitchen salt, simple kitchen salt, table salt. If I was serious, like a serious person with money and assets, I mean, and more knowledge in chemistry, I would have used all sorts of sodium molecules. But that's what I do, and sometimes it's good enough. Salt is generally used in our context to improve conductivity of liquid. It's true both for water and for oil and for mixtures of oil and water. As opposed to what many people intuitively think, water is actually not that conductive. Certainly not pure water like H2O, but you rarely actually encounter a pure H2O in our world or in our domestic environment. And oil is even less conductive. There might be some kind of synthetic oils that are more conductive, but I don't know of such things. I just use basic, things like, cooking oils, olive oils, linseed oil, and sometimes I use melted wax, which is not oil, but I mean, let's leave melted wax aside, although it's an important material for the neurons. But oil is widely used, like in whatever I do, because it was proven that the neurons survive very well in oil, and they do not survive well in water, unless it's water with oil. Then they survive better. And we've seen it like even today, or yesterday, last microscopic review. That, I mean, the liquid remnants, we've seen like very few neurons relatively, and with the oil that was with the part that was, the most of the material from this crucible that was placed in the other two crucibles, and that was, where most of the oil material was concentrated, it will see much more neurons. It's to be expected. Now, why salt is needed? Sometimes to increase conductivity, usually. That's how I use it. Why do I want to increase conductivity? Because I work with electrolysis many times, and sometimes, I mean, if the mixture is just not, I mean, you need the medium to be conductive to some extent. Otherwise, I mean, you don't get any current. Now, the problem with adding salt to the mixture, first of all, any other way that is not like by adding something to the mixture, like the usage of magnets or different kind of wiring or parallel, circuits is mostly preferable to adding stuff to the mixture. I mean, because I don't know what would be the effect of adding the stuff to the mixture. Like, I mean, you would want just not to kind of throw everything that's like on your mind to the mixture. I mean, because everything you put in the mixture could have all sorts of results, maybe positive, maybe negative. And in any case, after some time, I mean, the salt does not resolve, it does not dissolve in the water. I mean, you can probably do that, but not with great amount of salt. When I just do it without dissolving the salt beforehand, I mean, what happens is it sinks to the ground, and then you have a layer of salt in the bottom of the ocean. Although it should be said that I'm not sure how the salt is interacting with the Neros. Maybe it catches maybe it catches the Neros. There is an issue with ionization because the salt might be ionized and also the Neros might be ionized, especially when they are inside the electrolysis chamber. So they might be attracted to the salt and then concentrate in the salt, which might be good or bad. I mean, I didn't put any effort on actually studying these things too much. It just wasn't, like the many other things that are related to whatever I do. This was kind of left without any even basic research. But I think I should do it actually. I think this should be done. I mean, the last couple of days, I mean, kind of resurfaced, the issue of salt in my mind. Although I should mention that, a related issue is that at some point, maybe 10 months ago or so, I've had I've done some kind of experiments with water from the Mediterranean, salt water, and we've seen initially very good results. Of course, mixed with oil and with Nero juice, and mixed with oil and Nero juice. Even without electrolysis or fire, just placed in a container to see what happens, and we've seen very good development of ecosystem after not a lot of time, maybe even just days and certainly 2 weeks or so. We've seen huge Neros growing, and we've seen all sorts of plankton monsters, mutants growing together with the Neros, and we see them fight each other, eat each other, kill each other, mutate each other, which is very beneficial. I like this kind of mixture. That you see growth of monsters. It goes hand by hand with the growth of the Neros. I mean, it's not just the Neros kill them and eat them and then they are done. No, the Neros are smart enough to both grow them and eat them. They know what they are doing. It's an ecosystem. Things like that are very common, in Earth. I mean, you don't need robots, mind reading, or telepathic robots for that to happen. These things happen naturally as part of ecosystems. Many times, when you introduce or reintroduce two competing species that are known to compete each other and fight each other even for source of food, introduce both to the same kind of geographic cell where they once existed and now no longer exist, you can see that they actually thrive together. There are all sorts of explanations to that. Even though, from a basic kind of, basic human thought, you think, okay, so one will just destroy the other, but no, many times they prosper together. One such an example is wolves and bears in the Californian outback, in the Sierra Nevada and King's Forest or whatever it's named, all sorts of such places. It's an historical example. Wolves and bears are prehistoric animals, enemies. They are enemies since forever, pretty much. Never mind. Let's leave it aside. But this is related to. But after some time, there was a huge reduction in all life forms, and then dormant, like, and no more development of the neros inside the container of the Mediterranean water, because most probably because there was no oxygen, because it was a sealed, the disease was sealed containers. Again, at the time, I wanted to avoid open containers because it became too, like, the room was like, it was like a zoo of, like, animals, and so and when you limit yourself to sealed containers, I mean, you greatly reduce the viability of creating life forms, any kind of life forms. See, that doesn't mean that the neurons are going to die, but they will not develop in the ecosystem pathway, I mean, without any, like, electrolysis or crucible, because, like, without electricity or heat, probably they can also use, other forms of energy, like energy, like, like from radiation, like, from probably radioactive isotopes are great for them, most probably. And also there is the issue of, can they utilize kinetic energy, which is a very interesting topic. I discussed it in the past. It's actually very interesting. It's also related to the issue of sound that I mentioned in the previous video, I think. Or maybe not, maybe it was not recorded, I don't remember. Because there was some evidence that they can actually use kinetic energy from sound. Let's leave it now. But mostly, I mean, if it's not from, I mean, the way that I do things, according to the things that are available to the tools that are available to me, is either electrical energy using, the methods of electrolysis, or heat energy in the crucible, or what I call the ecosystem pathway, which means let it create containers with all sorts of life forms and let them go together. And it's actually a great way to create a huge population of neurons if you know what you're doing. It's not trivial, but if you know what you're doing and you use the correct material, it's a great way. Though it takes some time, it's not as quick as you've seen, with heat or electricity. And also, you need oxygen. Without oxygen, it's not going to happen. Not for the neurons, but for the life forms. Of course, it's not a huge constraint. I mean, you can just, build an aquarium with, oxygen supply. But I don't have even money for that. So I'm limited in all sorts of ways. Anyway, a great kind of, like, with regards to salt water, a great kind of, like, future research idea that I have in my mind for a long time is to actually create kind of like aquarium based on water from the Mediterranean that I actually have now, because like a week ago I went to the beach to take, like, about 1 liter of salt water and a little bit of sand from the sea, and to mix it with oil and Nero juice, and also and keep it open, or alternatively buy air supply, like aquarium air supply, if I have the money. It's certainly something that I want to do based on, like, on previously very good initial results with such things. And this is also related to the issue of salt. So the question of why salt water shown you such nice results. It can be either because ionization or because of the plankton that is in there, or both. What I would like to do, and that's a new objective, I would say, if we can get to it, and if not, it will stay for the future, is first do some kind of microscopic examinations of the actual salt layers that exist, mainly in the electrolysis chamber that we used in the first couple of days of the experiment. So I've used quite a bit of salt restore, like a salt layer, a salt deposit, like in the bottom. So maybe we can test it under the microscope, maybe with all sorts of stains, like the red, the blue, or both, or none, to see what's going on over there. Maybe we want to be surprised. So that's one thing. Second, what I would like to do is to try to do something that I have never done. I don't think that I've ever done that, but it might be interesting, which is to use neuroelectrolysis, but when the mixture is either all soaked salt. I mean, salt that is soaked with mixture. I mean, with neuro mixture, but I mean that it's still like, you know, like wet salt, but I mean mostly salt, or the same, but with kind of like a small layer of liquid, a very small layer of liquid above it, of liquid that is like mostly water and oil with neo juice above it, and you put the rods in the salt, like at the end of the rods are stuck in the salt. I don't think I've ever done that in both configuration, and see what happens, what's happening. This could be interesting. I mean, what's expected to happen is that it will be it will close a circle, because presumably there is very high conductivity in the mixture now. So we'll have a hot circle that might or might not energize the neurons very well. What we will not have probably is electrolysis, because current will not flow through the liquid, but just through the salt. And also we will not have much liquid. I mean, in both configurations we have very little to almost no liquid at all. So there will be no much H2O anyway to separate to hydrogen and oxygen. And maybe, and we spoke about it in the last couple of days, it was mentioned, it's also a question, like in a looming question with regard to electrolysis. It's a very basic question, but I didn't have the opportunity to get my mind into it very deeply, even though it's important. But what can I say? I know I do many things in parallel. So, but there is a very important question. Like, again, I should remind you of the question of what's the component of the actual electrolysis within the electrolysis? I mean, what's the importance, if at all, of the actual separation of H2O to H2O to molecules as part of energizing the neurons? My initial thought that it's that it's not important at all. It's like a side effect, like galvanization or ionization. But it might not be true. Maybe, the available hydrogen molecules or the available oxygen molecules are supremely important for anything that the neurons are doing. I mean, I don't know, maybe. It's a question. I'm not sure. Anyway, such experiment that they've devised, electrolysis where the mixture is almost all soaked salt, and can kind of give us some new input with regard to the question of is it like a proper way to energize the neurons, as we should see from the results of the experiments. And also, I mean, what's it can give us some clues or initial clues as to what's the actual importance, if at all, of the available oxygen and hydrogen double molecules in energizing the neurons. Now, another thing that could be done with salt, and I intend to do it, is to, and I've not done this before, is to use is to take a mixture that is typical of mixture that is used in crucibles. Maybe just the mixture that we already have now from the crucible that was used in this experiment, which means that it mostly contains oil and melted beeswax and just a little bit of water, just a tiny bit of water, and of course Nero juice. And do two things actually. First, add a lot of salt to it and mix it, and then take the whole mixture and spill it in another same container, but this time where there, there is like a layer of just salt in the bottom. So we'll have like a layer of salt, and then like bigger layer of oil, melted beeswax, Nero juice, and a little bit of water, and a little bit of other chemicals that we use as part of standard, I would say, crucible experiments. And then what I would like to do is to heat it in a crucible again. Preferably, I'll try to with low fire, like with low heat. Like I'm going to use like even lower than what I've used until now, because I do not necessarily want it like to boil, to boil. What I would like to achieve this way is a very primitive form of. We've already spoken about something like that with regards to bright source energy and the prospect of Venusian power plants or moon power plants, if you remember the issue of molten salt. The idea is to try to energize the Neros with heat, but over relatively long time, and the heat should be, according to the plan, maybe it's just, it's all going to spectacularly flop, but it's okay. Flops are also, we can allow ourselves to conduct some like spectacular flops. It's okay if it's not dangerous. But the idea is that to try to energize the Neros over relatively longer time, and not limit ourselves to the burning of the crucible, which is mostly like, not more than like 20 minutes or 15 minutes, because all sorts of reasons. So we want like long range burning. Yes, this can be achieved using electrical stove, like that can be primed to like for very low heat, but I don't have such a thing. And it's just seem interesting to me to do it this way. Actually, it's interesting. It just sounds interesting anyway to do it this way. Even if I had like electric stove, probably I'll do it anyway, like this what I'm describing now, because it just seems interesting. So the idea is that the salt will be heated, and then will radiate heat over a relatively long time to the oil mixture above it, and that way the Neros will be able to like be energized. Like low output, but over like longer time than what we've used until now in crucible, and then see what happens. So that's the plan. Yeah, it's a little bit sketchy, and you could argue whether I don't know. It sounds like interesting. Maybe it's going to be a complete flop, but let's just let's do it. Why not? So that's the plan with regards to salt. Hopefully it will be done in the next couple of days, if not today.